Children getting slapped without repercussions, story elements that fizzle and die, parents abandoning their offspring to go be in a band. No, we're not talking about the current political climate. It's all in the movie we're discussing on this episode of Written Off. It's that time again. Yes, you've clicked that play on the podcast button. Fuck, that's not how it works. It is now. Who gives a damn? Welcome to Written Off. I'm your host, Bradley Freeman. With me today, as always, is my wonderful co-host, Mark. Mark, how you doing?
Very well. Thank you very much.
And how are you all doing out there in podcast land? Did you get that thing checked out under your foot? You know, that kind of tickly boil thing that Mark and I really told you last time you should get that checked. Look, if you just leave it there, it's going to pop in the shoe and then you have a squelchy shoe and no one wants that. So fuck all of that. Intro, that was terrible. Figure out the intro later on.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
On the show today, we're talking about one of the lesser Ghibli movies. Ghibli is, I think it's fair to say, Mark, beloved around the world, certainly in Japan.
Yeah, I've been to see 2 stage adaptations of Ghibli in London in the past year and a half. Moist eyes aplenty. There are very few people that don't tear up going to see either of them. So it's still massive here. I would say the audience sort of from 45 down to about 25, but in age. But yeah, it's extremely popular.
Ghibli, when it's working, more often than not, it does work. There's something crazy, undefinable, you could say magical. A Ghibli movie works on laws of storytelling that other movies just can't really work at. Some of the best Ghibli movies are what I would call quite a rambling narrations. It kind of like a boulder slowly rolls down the hill. How can I say it? It's difficult to define, but when I think of Ghibli movies, I think they're not...
Yeah, I think you're summing up very nicely. It is difficult to put your finger on it. It really is. And I know you didn't like the most recent one, which is extremely rambling and rolling. And
How Do You Live?
It was like Ghibli does David Lynch. And I always think they're always edited very oddly. The sound editing and the vision doesn't always match in a weird way. So it sort of leaves you with that slightly uncanny feeling of, oh, what just happened in that scene? I mean, in terms of fandom, well, there are obviously Disney fans here, of course there are, but they won't wear it on their chest as much as Ghibli fans will. People will openly talk about their love of it. I think it is considered to be a bit deeper and a little bit, as you say, difficult to define, so people can speculate about what it all means. And I'm not sure we'll say any of that about Earwig.
So as always, once we get into the meat of our wonderful podcast, I like to ask you, Mark, what have you been seeing? What have you been watching recently? And I actually have something I want to talk about with you. You have seen Longlegs, yes?
Yes. Oh, have you seen it now?
I've been so excited. I didn't even text you about this because I wanted to just spring this on you in the show. The whole time I'm watching it, I'm like, I want to ask Mark about this. Oh, yeah. Oh, the purpose of today is to talk about Earwig and the Witch. But basically, what did you think of Longlegs?
It's funny because I thought about it a lot when I was at the cinema yesterday. I really enjoyed it. I've listened to a few people talk about it since I've watched it. It's quite complicated because obviously it's a homage to lots of different things. It's a very, very well made, very nice looking, nicely edited and nicely acted thriller. I look forward to seeing it again because I wonder if I was fooled the first time, but I liked it. Yeah, I enjoyed it. And yourself?
I do not look forward to seeing it again. I will not see it again.
Oh dear.
No, look. After the movie, a friend of mine turned to me and said, what do you think? And he loved it. He was very effusive about it. I agree with everything you said. I think it's a phenomenally well-made movie. And I think Osgood Perkins made such smart choices. And Micah Monroe, I loved her acting in this. I mean, her acting is 98%.
Yeah.
just breathing. But God, what breathing? But it wasn't for me. So I like my horror to be pretty in your face, pretty, burger and fries kind of stuff. This I didn't find scary. But then again, God, horror is so subjective. And for anyone to say, well, I didn't find it scary, of course not. What scares you won't scare the other person. So that even then, that's not even a comment to make. But for me, that type of thriller or horror or suspense, yeah, it wasn't for me.
It's a really interesting one. Obviously, the marketing is now famously brilliant, and I'm sure we'll see lots and lots of companies.
Such good marketing. Such good marketing. Yeah.
They're going to try and ape that because it was brilliantly done. And I think the Cage performance and the way that performance works is, of course, not going to be to everyone's taste. I thought the beginning was brilliant, very creepy, semi-reveal of a character. And again, it had a lot of people sort of jumping in the cinema, but in a, not in a jump scare way. I felt, again, there's a bit of, I'll talk about David Lynch a lot, and I already have, but there's sort of Lynchian elements to it. I was not a fan of the exposition dump that happens. You may like that more than I, but I didn't feel any of that was necessary. I'd much rather it have been left for me to make a few decisions about what was happening.
That takes a hard turn into supernatural horror that I wish it had been like earlier on in the movie. I'm for and against it. I get both of it.
I think that's a really good way of putting it. I'm for and against it. And we have, whereas, I like something like The Witch because it's not clear. I like it not being clear, whereas you don't. So you as a writer, we've talked about this before, want things to fit in place and to slot into the puzzle clearly, whereas I don't care if there are 20 pieces missing. I'll just fill it in using my imagination. So, and in a way, one of the problems is it does a bit of that, a bit of what I like and a bit of what you like, and it doesn't make both of them work.
Maybe not, but I can't hold it against it. I'm so jazzed and happy to have seen a film that wasn't for me, if that makes sense. I told you earlier, I had the choice of seeing Maxine or Longlegs, and I saw Maxine and I felt, oh man, I made the wrong choice. Now that I've seen Longlegs, I think I made the right choice, but both were disappointing.
I think Longlegs will, as you say, will go on to inspire a lot of interesting things. It's one of those Cage films. It's going to go in with, it's like halfway between something like Mandy or the Color in the Shape.
Right.
The one he did, the Lovecraft, I forget what it's called, but
The Color and the Shape.
Yeah,
the color of night, the color purple. What is it?
Yeah, that one. I think it's sort of, now we've got a spectrum of Cage. And this is falling left middle of his spectrum. But regardless, the fact that it was made, the fact that it's done well, artistically very impressive, and the ending is a massive, well, the mother is a massive ripoff of Exorcist 3, which is a film I'm going to keep.
Yes. I also love the stuff like there's a bit where like the lead character is looking at a door and the door is chained and then the camera cuts back, the chain is off. You could call it a continuity error, but I think it was purposeful. And I was like, oh, I like this. I like that the director is clearly saying, you don't know what's going on here and I will not reassure you. So I got a lot of good things to say about this movie. And I while it wasn't for me, I really hope that the thing that it inspires, the next thing down the pipe, I mean, hell, Perkins' next film is based on a Stephen King short story about a monkey, which is awesome. I love that short story. So if that might be slightly more, I don't know. But either way, I give a non-thumbs up to Longlegs, but that's not a knock against it.
That's what good films do. There's a lot of films I'll see and I'll say, well, I can see why that's popular, or I can see why people like it. And that is always one of the most, for the highest praise I can give, really. Well, I can see why people like it. I don't, but yeah.
Speaking of what good films do, on this episode, we're talking about Earwig and the Witch. Goro Miyazaki's 3D CG Studio Ghibli film based on the novel by, is it Diana Wynne Jones, the author of Howl's Moving Castle? So let's get into it. A basic summary of the film. This film is, I'm happy to say, very, very easy to summarize. It's about a girl who is orphaned. She is raised in an orphanage. She doesn't want to be picked by any parents. She's quite happy living in the orphanage with her awesome buddies, and she really likes controlling them, specifically a little boy she names Custard, until one day, two bizarre individuals come and adopt her, seemingly against her will. They are magicians, but they're also, spoiler, in a band, or they were in a band, and that's somehow related to the mother, which might be interesting, but the movie doesn't care about it. And then suddenly at the end, the ending just happens. It's about an orphan girl who likes being an orphan, who becomes not an orphan, and nothing really happens.
at some point in the credits, it credits Hayao Miyazaki as being involved in planning. There's absolutely no way he was involved in planning the script or the animation. So perhaps he planned lunch, like, because when you watch it, I suppose it depends on context, a little bit like we were saying with Long Nose. If you went into that thinking it was a low budget made for TV thing that's supposed to be put, I mean, you've got two boys, supposed to be, well, your boys are educated much better, but
I wouldn't be so sure.
you put it in front of the kids, it moves around and the kids are diverted by it. And if you saw it in that context, if it just popped up and you didn't know anything about where it's come from, you wouldn't like it, but you wouldn't care. But this, the fact that it has the pedigree of all pedigree behind it, unfortunately, is a huge anchor and a lead weight around it. And it seems inexplicable. It honestly feels like a wind up when you watch it.
Well, let's get this out of the way. As to the pedigree, as to the famous Hayao Miyazaki, how much involvement did he have in the film? Even the legendary Toshio Suzuki, the producer that, Miyazaki and Suzuki-san, they are always together on their productions. How much involvement did they have in Earwig and the Witch? Well, I have this quote from Goro Miyazaki-san, who said basically, my dad told me to go with it, and Suzuki-san encouraged me, but after that, I was left alone on my own. And I made the anime with young staff, and I didn't consult with the old guys at all. Apparently, it's also said that he is the only one at the studio who knows the method of creating CG animation. So there you go, right there. It's difficult to talk about Earwig and the Witch for a number of reasons, but Mark and I, as we've talked about before, we lived in Japan, and when you live in Japan, Ghibli is sacrosanct. It is untouchable. Ghibli is a beloved institution, so much so that whenever a Ghibli film plays on terrestrial TV, on regular network TV, ratings go up huge. Even though millions upon millions of viewers have seen this movie before, they could buy the damn movie on fucking Blu-ray. Still, there's a reason why there's the Ghibli Museum, and now there's also the new Ghibli Park. Goro has had a really hard time because he is unfortunately the son of revered, legendary Hayao Miyazaki. It'd be the same if any one of Spielberg's children.
Or John Landis's children.
Son of a bitch. What the fuck was I talking about? Yeah, so it's every single one of Goro's movies is maligned just because he is not his father.
Yeah, I know.
Each director is different. And, Goro makes a lot of different choices that Miyazaki, his father, wouldn't. And unfortunately, because Ghibli, for the most part, has done nothing but make Hayao Miyazaki movies, there's a tone, there's a balance, there's a pacing, there's a style. You could call it whimsical. I think that's probably the best word to describe the Ghibli vibe is charming and whimsical and nature-loving and unique. All of Goro's movies are much more simplistic. Tales of Earthsea is a much more A to B to C story. And it's weird that this actually isn't.
No.
This movie was targeted right out of the gate. Like, oh, it's another Goro picture. Oh, it's CGI. Already it was torpedoed. And then, interestingly, this movie debuted on network TV.
Yeah, it didn't get, yeah, that's right, yeah.
And then it was released for cinemas a year and a bit later.
Due to public demand, yeah.
It's got scenes that weren't in the original version, but no one came to see it. I remember the trailer specifically saying, with new scenes, which makes me think, what the hell played on TV?
Yeah, I think the version that we saw is that the quote-unquote theatrical version then?
Yes.
I think it's 80-something minutes. That is, no, it's less than that, isn't it? It's a very short film. I forgot how long it is. 82 minutes, right. So that is the theatrical version.
Yes.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I wonder what was added back in. Probably that second montage. There's two montages almost back to back, which both with this similarly appalling music, both accomplishing absolutely nothing. In a way, I can see why he went for this story, kind of, because it is a strong young female character being taken out of a comfort zone into another, which is fairly familiar to most of Miyazaki. The very, very bare bones are not completely un-Ghibli, but that's literally where the journey ends. They very strangely walk to the house, there end the journey. It's quite extraordinary.
Well, let's bring it back. Let's bring it back. Okay. What does work about this film in terms of the story it's trying to tell?
Yeah, go on. Yeah, go ahead.
The opening is great. There's a cool woman on a cool bike and she's biking along to cool music.
Yeah.
A car comes up behind her and tries to bite her, and then she throws worms at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then she goes to an orphanage with her baby, and she lovingly, but also kind of harshly tells the kid, well, this is where I get off. It's up to you from here. Just as an opening. Oh, well, what are we in for? Because nothing is explained. It is intriguing. And speaking of the film, I would say the CG, well, no, it's not Pixar levels. And I know the Japanese public or just Ghibli fans were expecting a rival to Pixar. Look, that's not going to happen. I think it is sufficient. But in terms of the opening screenplay, that works. That sets up something intriguing. I mean, just the possibilities of this girl. What is she going to do? What is she going to be? Where is the story going to take us?
A little bit influenced by things like Detective Conan, or like it has that kind of vibe to it, which separates it from OG Ghibli.
So I think the beginning is terrific. And I also think, sadly, and this is very much unearned, the end credits are very effective. The end credits, well, there's no other way to say it. They ape Totoro. Goro just steals what his father did in Totoro, and he wraps up the story by using just illustrations to tell you what happens to the characters once the movie, quote unquote, is finished.
Yeah.
And the illustrations are very, very charming. They're very endearing. It makes you feel something towards these characters that you haven't felt the entire movie. It's very much cheating to have that in there. I'm on record as saying the opening is great and the ending, while cheating, works.
So if it was a book, you're saying I enjoyed the foreword and the acknowledgements, the like coming in the next book that sometimes when I used to get books as a kid on the back page, you'd be like, in the next Hardy Boys adventure, stuff you might really enjoy.
So what about for you? What works for you?
I think it's fair. I don't think it does a terrible job of, it's very Harry Potter, isn't it? Right, we're putting this baby in this position, and yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. It's worse witch, that's strong tradition in British children's writing of that kind of setup. I mean, generally it reminds me a little bit of Coraline, the atmosphere of it.
Yes. Yep.
I can see what's behind it. I mean, I'm jumping forward a little bit, but what's behind this wall? What are these adults doing? Why don't I really understand what they're doing? And then that is something that I think any child has, is when you go into a new environment, the curiosity of what am I going to find here? It does really, I mean, I don't like her character in almost any way, but it does a pretty good job of making her curious. And so, yeah, the opening, I'd agree. The end credits, yeah. I mean, they start off and they set up that relationship, which could have been quite a good relationship between her and Custard. I think there's something to say there, if you want to say it. But as I alluded to earlier, it almost literally doesn't go anywhere to the end of the road, and that's it. So the setup encourages you to believe that this is Ghibli, but it's going to go somewhere a little bit else, and then it doesn't.
What is the first mistake the film or the story makes? And I think you hit on it. The movie introduces you to Earwig and her irrepressible nature, her bossiness, and a lot of negative points, which is fine. That's the whole deal with Chihiro or Sen from Spirited Away. She's a crybaby. She's not independent. A very flawed character in the beginning of that movie. But then she learns the value of hard work, yada, 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 and she becomes someone different. So you think with Earwig, okay, she's clearly the boss of the orphanage. She loves being the boss. She absolutely makes life a living hell for Custard. And I think the movie makes you believe, oh, it's going to be a twofer. It's going to be about these two characters, Earwig and Custard. And I think the first mistake it makes is by removing Custard from the equation completely.
I don't know why you would, because that kind of tandem relationship, she's protective, and there's a couple of nice lines there about, when it's quite uncomfortable to watch, really, the parents come and they're choosing their orphan, and there's something to be said there. And it is, you can understand why Earwig's back is up and she's very resentful of the whole process, and she's the queen of the castle in that environment, and you've got that little two-hander, which, yeah, you think, okay, you'd expect them to go off somewhere, but Custard to be brought along, put in the rucksack kind of thing, and then they're trying to escape from the house. And, I think you're right. The setup is there, and it's easy to understand. It's familiar, but it could go off in different directions with the enigmatic mother character. It's there for you, but it's just so baffling. I mean, as we talked about before, this story was not finished, or the original story in which it's based wasn't finished. Unless you're going to adapt it and expand it, maybe they weren't able to do that. I struggle to understand why you would choose a story that, again, almost literally goes nowhere.
I thought they were setting up Custard because Custard was very much saying, well, I want to look good for the parents. I want to be adopted. I want to be taken. And she was, of course, saying up and down, no, 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 no. I thought that they were going to set up heartbreak early in the film by having Custard be adopted.
You would have thought, yeah.
Add a bit of emotional gut punch right at the beginning, but they didn't. She got chosen. So that's...
Yeah, kind of Annie, isn't it? It's a bit of an Annie sort of situation. But then, of course, she's adopted. I'm not, you'd even say adopted, enslaved by these two. I mean, where do you begin with those two characters? I'm not quite sure what their relationship is.
Yeah, the movie certainly doesn't care. Yeah.
All right, so we'll say setup. You feel like you maybe understand where it's going. You feel like there's going to be an arc. Her strong points are going to come out, and like in Spirited Away, those points that are quite annoying at the beginning come out and are evolve and refined over time. But it's almost like after the first 10 minutes, the film just it might as well just finish.
Hey there. This month sees the release of my latest novel, Momo and Matsu, the director's cut. Is it cheating to call it my latest when I originally wrote the thing ages ago? Nah, let me have this win. Look, honestly, I'm really excited for this one to finally be out, as it's been in the making in one form or another for over 10 years. The story centers around Matsu, an old train driver who's long past caring about, well, most things. Tragically, a high school girl takes her life by jumping in front of his train. That night, he returns home to find her waiting for him. Her name is Momo, and she has a smile on her face. He can't explain it, and honestly, neither can she, but the two of them are now linked, forced to work together to save each other from a fate worse than death. Which, for Momo, considering she's already died once, has got to be a hell of a nightmare. When this novel was originally published, I was about 5 or so years into my life in Japan. I'd written screenplays and stuff for theater before, but Momo was my first novel. With this new director's cut, fully revised and updated from cover to cover with new chapters, lore, characters, you name it, I was able to put 17 years of day-to-day living in Tokyo in there, with monsters. I mean, come on, it's me. Gotta have some monsters in there somewhere. Some people would say it's a shortcoming, but I ask you, wouldn't a recent Snow White live-action remake film have been better off with a bunch of creepy monsters running around? Maybe Earwig and the Witch should have followed suit and put a few in there. Could have saved the movie. All I'm saying. Anyway, Momo and Matsu, my new book on Amazon, ebook, paperback, hardcover, or if you're really crazy, you can go to my website, bradleyfreeman.net, and you can order a personalized signed paperback copy from me. Anyway, let's get back to the show. So that leads us to the next section of this. So why do you think they made the story choices they did? Why did they zigzag all over the map? If I was the writer for this, if I have Earwig at the beginning spouting out this unlikable kind of stuff and clearly putting on a brave front, I would have a scene or a moment where she gets knocked on her ass. I would have a moment where she does break down behind closed doors. I'm never picked. Or a moment where she talks to her matron and her matron has to harshly tell her the ways of the world. You have a moment where that facade comes off and you see this scared, frightened, hopeful little girl. But they never do that. In fact, she doubles up and triples up throughout the movie. I actually have a tally here, and again, this is not screenplay related, of the facial expressions that the character of Earwig makes, particularly the face, the angry kind of face. She says 58 times in the movie, and she makes the face about a couple of dozen more times. She makes that expression the most in the entire movie. This I am so done with it face. And it's like, well, unfortunately, you're telling the audience you're done with it, and we're done with it by nature.
Well, there's a scene where she's in her room. I think it's the second day, and there's a bit of sort of gentle harp music. I've written it down. And she says, I miss Custard. There's just so much I could tell him. And you're like, okay, right, he's coming back. There'll be some contrivance. He'll get up in the morning, or she'll decide she's going to break him out, or whatever. No, dropped. She's back into the kitchen, and again, another 2 montages back to back. So there are a couple of points where you think they're going to pick it up, and as you say, they double down and triple down and refuse to develop the story. Well, I mean, I suppose you could say they develop the characters a little bit, the witch and the mandrake, I believe, and then you've got that backstory of the mother, so you've got that thread there, and she does kind of investigate it when she plays that record. There are little threads that could be picked up with Custard involved, but again, it's almost like a lot of very short episodes of a TV show that have been pushed together.
A good point, because like she finds this tape, and we know as the audience, oh, damn, this tape is important because it was with her as a kid, but she has no emotional moment with the tape. When she does get the album, I would have written a scene where she breaks down crying, like, this music is my life. This voice seems familiar to me. Have this emotional connection to this music, but there isn't that. Like you're saying with Custard, oh, here it comes, an investment. But the film just smacks Custard out of the way and instead raises the cat character. But the cat character, Thomas, only starts speaking at the midway point of the movie. And this black cat is incredibly similar artistically or design-wise to the cat character from another Ghibli classic, Kiki's Delivery Service. It's just that there are so many, the puffballs from Totoro, there are so many amazingly cute, merchandisable characters that Ghibli excels at. And it's like, oh, it's just a cat.
Do we know what the relationship is between the studio and the original story? Were they allowed to change anything? What kind of restrictions did they have in place? Maybe the cat was, you've got to bring the cat along. He's an essential beloved character in this random short story. I don't know if that's got something to do with it. I mean, obviously cat equals witch. So basic, simple iconography for anyone who's ever, seen anything about witches. I mean, how would you describe the cat's character?
He's a lot of I suppose it's trying to be comedic, but it's not really. It's not a zany cat. It's not a hyper cat. It's just a cat that's there to explain to her plot points that aren't really plot points. The cat has no connection to the music.
No.
In fact, when she plays the music, the cat's like, another unexplainable choice. You could have had a connection there, but no.
Well, that's why I think, coming back to the original question, why did they make the choices? And inexplicable. A lot of it is inexplicable. You're never invested. You're occasionally on the cusp of being invested, but they introduce characters too late, or they shunt them off screen too early. Are we supposed to be interested in what the Mandrake is doing, or what has that to do with anything? If it was somehow weaved in with the mother and the mute, I mean, it kind of is right at the end, I suppose, but everything is incongruous to everything else. You just don't know why anything is happening, or really, I'm not even sure why they picked her up. You've watched it more recently than I. Did they know that it was their friend's daughter?
No. There's no indication. When they line her up against the wall and the Mandrake kind of grows very, very tall, none of the other kids react. Only she reacts, which tells the audience, oh, okay, so the Mandrake is magical and only Earwig can see it. But it's not told to the audience. Does Mandrake observe that Earwig noticed? There's none of that there. So much like the film itself, we're just going to barrel to our last question. What scenes, what changes would have made this better? And we've already started to talk about that. For example, the Mandrake character, he's a grumpy magic person, and that's all we know about him. He's also a musician, but he doesn't tell Earwig in a heartwarming moment, I was in your mother's band. This music means everything to us. He does say she left us, but he doesn't say your mom. And at the beginning of the movie, there's 12 witches are after her, which is completely irrelevant to the plot because we never see these witches.
Yeah.
We never know what she's done. There's no price aside from Earwig being left to be adopted. There's a lot of really interesting threads. This could be a very emotionally rewarding, musically based story about a rebellious orphan, but you mentioned Coraline before. Coraline's got a very nasty thread to it, a dark element to it, a bite to it. This movie has no bite.
No.
despite the fact that they are abusive towards her, they treat her like a slave, but then they do feed her very well. So
it's a real puzzle. It's a real puzzle. I don't know if it's budget related. If again, the fact that there are only two settings effectively. There's the orphanage and then there's the house. And yeah, the house does a few bits and pieces. And that, again, that kind of reminds me of Coraline. Coraline is a film that just stays within that house, but it goes to different areas of it. And they're the similar-ish, like at times, the Mandrake's effect on the house, if you're looking at it through a child's eyes, there is something there. But that wouldn't really fit in with the, like you said, the witches and the mother and the music. That doesn't really work together, not really. And if you're going to bring Custard into it, well, why would he be there? So you've got 3 or 4 ideas that you could have gone with one of them. And again, I don't know why it needs to necessarily even be attached to this short story. You can just, okay, we've got that basic concept and we will make something, away from that, which is what most Ghibli things, Alice in Wonderland becomes Spirited Away. They've done that, and they I think they know, well, the elders know how to do it, but maybe Goro, I don't know. I would love to know what he thought he was doing.
So then let me ask you, were saying you like it when a story doesn't spoon feed you, when
Oh, yeah.
I like things to be a bit more cut and dry. So for me, I would love a scene where it all builds to a head. And hopefully by this point, Earwig has some magical powers. So it builds to this, not a fight, but it builds to an explosion, a moment between her and Mandrake. And then he is forced to reveal the truth to her. He apologizes. When your mother left, it hurt me. It destroyed the band. It took away our magic. That's why I can't control this house as well as I used to. A moment where the illusion shatters, and what you've got is a broken old man. Now, would that be effective for you, or is that too...
No, I mean, obviously, the audience for this, no, I mean, it would, yeah, maybe it's a little bit wrapped up with a bow, but I think it would satisfactorily complete that particular arc or solve that particular mystery without solving every mystery. And again, it leaves enough room for you to imagine a bit more about the world, the witching world, or which also is weird because it kind of alluded to, but never really developed. But yeah, it would leave enough space for you to sort of still consider exactly who they are, how they function. Is it a Harry Potter, they live amongst us, but we don't notice them situation? Or I think me and my sister really liked the worst witch movie, the Tim Curry. Have you ever seen that? Tim Curry.
Yep.
Again, atrocious. I mean, I've watched it relatively recently, but it doesn't try and do too much, and it exists within its own world, and the world is well drawn. So what you're saying is you would fill in the world a little bit, but still have enough outside of that bloody house. You can imagine what's happening outside of that house. So yeah, I think that would work. It's just pull on any of those threads that you've got, just any of them. Have Custard find the music and say, well, hang on, this woman looks like you. It's like a sketch that they've started and just abandoned with no guiding light of where they want to go with it.
Probably that budget was affected. Something was affected because in this movie, 2 minutes before the end of this movie, we have narration where Earwig says, 6 months have gone by since they took me into this house. Suddenly, there is the most abrupt and intrusive explaining it all away. Then it cuts to the credits and they continue to tell the story falsely. Clearly, something has happened during this movie. What I found quite egregious was the character of Baba Yaga. She slaps Earwig.
Yeah.
It happens, but it doesn't mean anything. You mentioned Harry Potter before, and what I think Harry Potter does very, very well is when you meet Harry, especially in the books, I think the first 4 books, when you meet Harry, he's always with the Dudleys, and it's quite a horrible life. It's a really bleak and nasty life. They treat him like absolute shit. And I feel like this movie suddenly wanted that. But Earwig reacts with shock, doesn't say anything. The cat doesn't do anything. Nothing happens. And then later on, through a flashback, we see Baba slapped her mom as well. So that's 2 slaps this character gets out, and there's no comeuppance. Not to mention the fact that Earwig finds out about the fucking band an hour after the audience has already figured it out. An hour.
Obviously, you've got a lot of echoes of sort of Roald Dahl. Most of the adults in Roald Dahl are beastly, quite literally, to the children. And if you're going to do that, you need a comeuppance. And really, you need it because you're showing bloody kids. Like, I actually can't believe that just goes past. And I can sort of imagine children just turning to their parents like, It's inexplicable. It's completely inexplicable. she's beastly enough. You don't need that slap. I keep going back to these two slavery montages of what she's being asked to do, which I guess is why she was adopted. I'm still not really very clear as to why. Isn't it because the man, I'm not even sure. I think, didn't the mother beg Mandrake to get, I can't remember. I mean, I would love to know what Goro was. I would love to. I don't know how many interviews he's given about this, but
I'm paraphrasing here, but this has always stuck with me because I think it is a genius observation. Miyazaki, the father, Hayao Miyazaki-san, he dragged his son over the coals when Tales of Earthsea was released. He said something to the effect of, well, in this movie, bad is a monster and the monster gets fought and killed and defeated. That's it. It's over. But in his movies, typically in Hayao Miyazaki's movies, typically the bad guys aren't bad guys at all. They start off bad, but by the end, they either turn or it's revealed they were never bad at all. So I do love that about a lot of Ghibli movies, or the bad guy is deforestation, something ephemeral, something intangible.
Well, maybe it says something about how Goro sees child-adult relationships, or
maybe.
It does feel quite British. There's a lot of cruelty in British, even children's stories. Generally speaking, let's say Roald Dahl, the adults are not redeemed, they're destroyed. Almost all of them. So you either go that way or you go, let's say what you're saying, the Hayao Miyazaki way.
Yeah, it goes straight down the middle and then it turns off the car engine and just stops in the middle of the desert. Well, some would say it's like, well, you decide what happens. But no. This movie doesn't even have the balls to try and pull that off. It's just like whatever.
Well, yeah, it teases you with, or maybe Custard will come to visit, but he's too scared. And then he just doesn't come. And then isn't it Merry Christmas? Isn't that? Yeah, that's it. Yeah, Merry Christmas. That's the end. In spite of the fact that I will never watch it again, and I would implore everyone listening to never watch it, it's one of those films that thinking about why decisions were made, how they were made, is probably the most interesting thing about it. Obviously in this, do you keep it textual? Do you go metatextual? Do you talk about some films we've talked a lot about? And I think when we get to a certain Indiana Jones film, we'll talk a lot about why the film looks the way it does because of external factors. And this is something that does need to be considered when you're considering how a film's been written. But this one, really, all of the interest is, why did it go so badly wrong? Why isn't it fleshed out? Why is it sort of a rudderless ship?
Perfect. Rudderless ship. Yes. It doesn't have confidence. It doesn't have a follow through. It makes the criminal mistake of introducing us to characters without any intention of helping us to believe in these characters.
No.
We are watching characters. We're not even observing. We're just watching characters without buying in. That actually, I believe, is a fundamental screenplay issue, because the CG, people attack the CG. I would say that the most criminal thing about the CG is that it doesn't make use of anything. It could have been 2D traditional animated, and God knows I adore traditional animation. It could have been that because there are no sequences that demand it. I remember Hayao Miyazaki saying that Ponyo was quite difficult because it was set on the ocean. And of course, ocean physics are much easier to pull off in CG. So I do not know why it went 3D CG. Ostensibly, I'm guessing because the younger Miyazaki is like, hey, for God's sake, we've got to move with the times. I remember that for the last Evangelion movie they made, a segment at the end of the movie, they actually animated traditionally, like by hand. It wasn't digital. They used the presses and the paper. And apparently the only surviving tool or mechanical element was owned by Hayao Miyazaki. So they had to go and say, can we borrow this to actually animate it? So it could be that Goro was quite strongly pushing Ghibli to which makes sense, because one of my favorite, if not my favorite, Ghibli movie is Whispers of the Heart, which was directed by a person that Miyazaki-san and Suzuki-san were kind of grooming to be the next big head director for the studio. Unfortunately, they passed away. So Ghibli has long had a problem of it's Miyazaki's studio. There's nothing else beyond that. So maybe Goro was pushing for that. Unfortunately, I think this was certainly a story that needed an extra draft. There needed to be someone to say, outside of petulant, Earwig has no other characteristic.
In a way, it almost feels like Goro's made this pitch and his father has said, all right, then go ahead, and then left him. And as you said, has literally left him and said, go on, you dig your own grave. It almost feels like there's a spite underneath it, that weird father-son spite that does exist in some father-son relationships, sadly. It almost feels like a film that is proving that films like that shouldn't be made, which is a bizarre thing to say, but it does feel like that. And his dad is just, you can just see that. I mean, Hayao Miyazaki, I'm not sure I'd want to have a beer with him. He has got a particular look about him. You can just see him, can't you? You can just see him, no expression, watching the film, you know, his son turning to him getting up and leaving the cinema. You can imagine it. Very horrible, really. I mean, it is.
As we wrap this up, I can't think of any reason to actually recommend this film to anyone. Whereas, for example, Skyscraper, it's got a bit of action to it. Pocahontas, gorgeous animation and some amazing music. Army of the Dead, no, I can't recommend that one either, unfortunately.
Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Mark, for co-hosting. Yeah, Earwig and the Witch. If you're listening out there and you haven't seen a lot of Ghibli movies, honestly, I cannot recommend them enough. I think for a lot of people in the West, be it America, England, New Zealand, whatever, growing up on Disney movies, depending on what generation you're from, growing up on Disney movies, it's kind of formative, right? Like you can remember when you were a kid, you saw Disney movie, and it really meant a lot to you. And maybe you saw it in the cinema, or maybe you saw it at home. Hell, this latest generation coming up, I'm pretty sure it's Disney Plus is where they'll be seeing most of their Disney movies for the first time. But anyway, Ghibli movies are exactly that for those living in Japan. They have that same cultural weight, they have that same storytelling power, and they've just got so much emotion and magic behind them. I'm waffling, but basically what I'm trying to say is, if you haven't seen much in the way of Ghibli, they're on Netflix. I would recommend Castle in the Sky. I think that is a perfect film. Never mind animation. Castle in the Sky is a perfect adventure film that is just a joy from start to finish with an imagination unlike anything else. But whatever you do, do not watch Earwig and the Witch. For our next episode, we're tackling a titan, a 85-year-old titan to be sure, but a titan nonetheless. Yes, it's Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. This was a really interesting one for Mark and I. This is a storied franchise with a beloved character who turned out to be in a movie that is not the rousing, get up on your feet and clap in the cinema ending perhaps the character deserved. Follow us on social media. Why? What are you asking me for? That's the thing that I'm supposed to say. I'm supposed to entice you to join us on social media. Now that you're asking the hard questions. Why? Because for shits and giggles? Because we're a desperate podcast eager for your attention? Written Off Pod on Instagram is where you go. Drop us a comment. Tell us how the episode was. Suggest another movie we could cover. Whatever floats your boat. God, I hate it when I use expressions I never use in real life. Seriously, floats your boat? The fuck? I never say that. But I got this mic in my face, and it's the first thing that comes to my mind. You can find me on Threads and Instagram at Brad is Writing. And as always, mates, you can't find Mark. Not because he doesn't love you. He does, in his uniquely British way. He just abhors social media. So, hope you enjoyed this episode. Hope you get out there and watch more Ghibli movies. Seriously, your life will be better for it. And honestly, when can one ever say that about movies? Not often. Sometimes, but not often. Have a great week. Stay safe out there. Go grab a slice of pizza. You deserve it. Yes, you do. Go on. Grab that slice or a whole pizza. I am not judging, and we'll catch you for the next one. Written Off is hosted by me, Bradley Freeman, and Mark Tasker. It's produced by the both of us, and it's edited by me. Our theme music is by Skane, and our artwork is by Sketchfro. This has been a Pugnacious Podcast production.